All right, all right. Welcome back to the Behind the Back podcast. I am your co-host, Ben the Jet Rets, and alongside me is the shell of Marcos Conde Negron because his spirit is a little crushed right now. Marcos, how are you doing, buddy?
1, 2, 3, Cancun, baby. Because that's exactly where Philly's at right now. So I might as well join them in spirit.
Yeah, that was a tough game to watch for sure. We'll talk about that a little bit, but yeah, I enjoyed watching Wildcard Weekend. There were some interesting outcomes. When I look at our predictions for Wildcard Weekend,
Another fun.
I was 3 for 6, but I think you were 0 for 6. Is that right?
I was an over, baby. Yeah, that was really bad.
Oh man.
I took some risks and it didn't pay off. Now that I blanked on all of them though, I just wonder like is that gonna happen like the whole way through? Now it's got me thinking my picks this week. So
We'll see. But hey, let's get into it. So first and foremost, you wanna talk about it?
yeah, so obviously the Eagles got undressed in Tampa Bay. They lost 32-9 in a pretty embarrassing fashion. After like the first quarter, it just made me feel like they had booked their tickets to Cancun 6 weeks ago when the Niners beat them. They're like, you know what? Not our year. We're going to fly out here from Tampa. We're going to be good. Like, that's what it felt like. So it sucked. And Tampa Bay was doing everything in their power to keep the Eagles in this game. And like, had the drops not happened for Baker, they would have won like 50-9. It was just, the same problems persisted. I don't know exactly what to think, and there's going to be a lot of movement, and we're going to keep this brief because it's tough to know right now because not enough information has come out. Like for the Cowboys, Mike McCarthy staying. That shocked me. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but so it makes me wonder that, you know, are they just going to roll with Sirianni and bring back a whole new supporting cast with him? I don't know what's going to happen with Kelsey. There was reports that he retired, but he came out on his podcast and said he hasn't announced it yet because it's too early. Fletcher Cox cleaned out his locker, so who knows, like his entire locker. So who knows if that's going to be
Yeah.
what that means. Lane Johnson said he's coming back. He says he still has a few good years in him. And Brandon Graham said that if the Eagles will have him one more year, this will be his farewell year. So it looks like the only one that's truly up in the air is Kelsey. I do think in terms of like the outcome of this loss, if whatever the Eagles decide coaching wise I think will influence Kelsey's decision a little bit. If he's already retired at this point, that's fine. I understand that. But if he were to come back, I think the only way he would is if Sirianni was here, because I don't think that he would go through an entire new coaching change with like the system changing, how they run practices and stuff. It would be more surprising to me if he came back with a new coach. So
Yeah.
I think so. There are a lot of factors coming into it, and we can talk about it. Like they had their exit interviews with the players, and Jeffrey Lurie has his exit interview with Sirianni on Friday, so tomorrow, and so we'll see how that goes. That's going to be the interesting pieces. But what we have heard is that Howie and Sirianni are working together to recruit a coaching staff. So that makes me wonder, is he most likely going to stay, or is he going to present his plan based off of some of the options that are out there? So we'll see. We'll know more. So next time we talk about it, there should be a lot more information with that. But in terms of what was said right after the game, players were backing Sirianni except for the $250 million man who made it seem like, so the question was like, oh, are you worried about Sirianni's, status with the team? And Jalen responded right after the game. He's like, I didn't know he was going anywhere. And then they're like, do you believe in Sirianni? And he was like, I believe in everybody in this building. I was like, that's not the question. The question is, do you believe in Nick Sirianni? And when so right after the game, it sounded a little weird. The difference between, and I noticed a stark difference. There's a reason Mike McCarthy's back right now. And part of it is because Dak Prescott was like, I love Mike McCarthy, and I did some great things. He's a great coach. I want him here. I sucked. Like, I want him here. And then when you hear the complete opposite from Jalen Hurts, I'm like, you are the guy who can provide Nick a lifeline here, and you weren't giving it to him.
And it's interesting. It's interesting about that because, like, if you if you don't know some of the things that Sirianni has done that have kind of gotten to Hurts prior to this, it just seems like he's backing everybody in the building, right? You're like, oh, he's just standing up for his team. He's like, I'm here for it. Like we're all in this together. Like I have faith in every single one of you from the coaching to the bottom, right?
Mhm.
But then you see these situations, one in particular where in the Super Bowl last year, it was like 7 minutes in the second quarter and the Eagles are up and there's like a replay or something, like somebody challenged, and Sirianni is looking up into the stands and he's like antagonizing Chiefs fans, and Jalen Hurts like pulls his arm down. He's like, "Don't do that crap!" Like, and it like it's these little things that like it kind of makes you wonder, like, was he genuine in what he was saying, or was he like really trying to step around that question?
So that was like right after the game, and then when they had the interviews today, the exit interviews, they asked him again. They're like, you know, do you believe in Sirianni? What do you hear about him potentially getting fired? And he's like, everyone was a part of the reason for the problem, and he's like, I want to fix this with Nick, and he mentioned Brian Johnson too. He's like, I want to fix this with all of them. I believe in everyone in this building. And then they asked like, oh, do you like Sirianni? Like, do you think they have a plan? And he responded, owners own, coaches coach, players play. He's like, I don't make any decisions in that regard. So he kind of, again, dancing around it, but he seemed to at least take some sort of a stance that he at least wants to fix it with Sirianni. And all the
Yeah,
other players like Kelsey, Mailata, Cox, they went to bat for Sirianni, saying he's a great coach. We want him back. He knows how to win. So it's like I'm hearing all these things from the players, and they come out and say we didn't execute, we didn't have a plan. And Kelsey said in his interview that, oh, we didn't execute, but when everybody looks bad down the stretch, it's a collective effort. The coaches didn't coach well enough, the players didn't play well enough. It was just a team failure. So
which is true.
which is true. So, and again, there's two sides to that stone. If that really was the case, is Nick Sirianni the guy? So if he doesn't present Lurie with a good enough plan, I hope we figure something out. So
Yeah, and that's true. I think in general, in sports in general, at least with my experience in the NBA and the NFL, from what I see from a fan perspective, is the coaches get a lot of that brunt. Like when things aren't going well, it falls to the coaching first, right?
mhm.
And you're like they've lost the locker room. That's the first thing that ever comes out. It's not that like the team is struggling. The first thing you see is like the coach has lost the locker room, and then it spirals from there. Like when you see the first report that potentially so and so has lost the locker room, it's like, oh god, here we go. Like we're getting down the path of it's going to end up firing our coach, right? um it's it's an unfortunate part of the business because it almost seems like players aren't held accountable the way they should be, because
Oh, for
I
sure.
mean, you've told me, we've had this discussion, offline, not necessarily on this podcast, but definitely offline, texting and just in person. Like, there's you've said there's a personnel issue with the Eagles, and it's not just the coaching, it's the players. I mean, we talked about how old they are, on the defensive end, right? These vets, they need to freaking go, right? It's at this point they need to go. They're a liability, not necessarily in the locker room, but on the field. Like it's showing, right? Um, and so are you gonna blame the coaching for that? Like it's it comes down to like, where do you put the blame in a lot of these scenarios? And I don't like Nick Sirianni, but I don't think he deserves to get fired. I really don't. I think he a year ago led a team to a Super Bowl and was the favorite going into the Super Bowl. In my opinion, I definitely thought going in the Eagles were going to win that. Um, and I was genuinely pretty shocked when they didn't. Uh, so when I look at it this year, I'm like, yeah, it was a pretty historic like collapse, but Nick's not on the field doing this, and there's a bunch of other coaches around him who, are they getting the same kind of fire that he is, for lack of a better phrase? You know what I mean? Like it's interesting how teams treat coaches.
Agreed, and especially in this particular instance where the reality of the situation is we pay Jalen, so he is the less expendable of the two. Like we are bought into Jalen. So unfortunately, if we have to bank on the fact that last year, 2022 Jalen was the Jalen that this team paid for, and he regressed. And part of that was because of the lack of continuity throughout the coaching staff. So that also brings the same question: is if we bring Sirianni back, who was supposed to, and he's kind of like the CEO head coach. He's not calling the plays, and even though there was times apparently that was reported where some of the players didn't know who was calling the plays, it seemed like Nick Sirianni was kind of overruling Brian Johnson on a few of these plays. But again, it runs down to the system. They didn't have answers for simple questions that they knew were coming over and over and over again. And that is on coaching. So I blame him for that, but there's a part of the players just didn't have the effort, but I don't think Jalen is not taking as much flack as most star quarterbacks would. Like if you go to flip it to Dallas, Dak gets every bad name, everything. If he plays poorly, he's lit up, like it's done. And
if the defense for Dallas plays like crap, Dak gets the blame.
Exactly. So it's very interesting that. So that's the kind of thing. But with Jalen, he's so highly regarded. People are like, oh, he can afford this. But now next year, the spotlight's going to be on him a little bit more. He has to produce, and the problem is, who is it going to be? Sirianni that can figure that out to kind of make things easier for him, because they weren't giving him any easy answers. There was so many plays that they could break down that during those blitzes, there's not a single person running on through the middle of the field. There's no easy options for him. So that's a schematic issue. And when you're audibling it within a schematic system, your audibles are other plays that you have in this playbook that also don't run towards the middle. So it's like they're simple things. Guys look discombobulated, and they switched up on defense, and it was just bad. All of it was just bad, and we need continuity. And next year is going to require learning somebody else's system, regardless of whether it's Sirianni's or, a new OC or a new head coach. And same on the defensive side, it's just going to be a whole new, system again. So that'll be the interesting part to look out for too.
Do you think that Sirianni was limited in terms of the kind of adjustments he could make because of the personnel he had?
No, that's the thing, especially offensively. Like, we have the personnel to run different sets. All we do is run shotgun or pistol. And we knew it was coming. Where they're stacking the box. They had 6 men on the line, and we responded by only running shotgun with 5 offensive linemen and no help. That happened consistently. So
that's true.
We never run plays out of the what's it called? Oh man, I don't even know, from center, where Jalen is under center. I almost forgot, because we never do it. It's just there's no easy options for, when you watch the Lions play with Ben Johnson, or even with the Niners, there's play action. There's easy buttons to press to kind of confuse defenses. We don't do that. We run the same thing. So, and it was over and over and over again. The only plays that were ever successful, and it was the RPO that Dallas Goedert went on the flat, and then he would catch it, and he was usually open, and that's kind of the only it play we had outside of the tush push, and that's just a whole. We didn't have any counterpunches to anything, so that needs to change.
Now that you mention it, did Jalen take a single snap under center like that? No, where the center literally hands him the ball? I don't remember him
outside
taking
of the tush
a single
push.
snap.
No. Mm-mm.
That's wild.
That's our offense. That has been the case. We hardly run under center, and we hardly run we don't run plays that aren't shotgun. That's been our offense this year, and that was our offense last year.
Gets so predictable at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened.
And we have the players to make this work. I'm confused as what we're just saying. Hey, we have AJ, Devontae, and Dallas, and we believe that we can beat you from the same formation every time because we trust our guys. So and that worked in 2022 because they didn't see that coming. It was hard to prepare for all that, but then when you can prepare, it's just easy. All we have to do is blitz Jalen, and they don't have any routes that end quick. There's no one running towards the field. There's no one turning quick enough for him to get the ball out. The time that it took for him to release the ball before seeing pressure was the fastest time of his career. He was getting pressured within 2.5 seconds, which was every single snap on average. So that was the highest of his career, because they just blitzed every time because they knew the Eagles weren't going to respond. So that's what cost them. And we need more, AJ Brown missing the game hurt, Reed Blankenship missing the game hurt, but watching our defense just not tackle anybody was embarrassing. It was so disappointing. And
I had never
then
seen that many missed tackles.
yeah, there was 10 missed tackles recorded wise. And again, we benefited from 7 drops, but and then there was possessions where and that was the problem too. Our field position to start most drives was bad because our defense like bent, but then so they got across midfield to around the 40-yard line. Then one of our guys would get a sack on third down. Then they punt it, back us up to the 10-yard line, and then we'd have to punt because we don't move the ball at all. So then we're punting from the 10 or the 20-yard line, and then they're starting at the 40, and it was back and
Yeah.
forth the same thing for like 4 drives because we couldn't get our offense going. And the only thing that we scored on was the one thing that we've only been good at, and that's just chucking a go ball. And Devontae broke open, and Devontae showed up. Shout out to Devontae. Shout out to Milton Williams. Shout out to Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, and Kelsey and Johnson. Like, those are the guys who showed up. That was it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it was really disappointing. And Bradbury just whiffing tackles. Darius Slay now looking like he could tackle anybody, and then he gets hurt, and it was disappointing all around. And guys were running into each other on defense, like on simple crossing routes. They're just slamming into each other, leaving guys wide open. It was just a microcosm of the whole season.
This is
So
a tough one, man. And it's so hard too, because when you hit the playoffs and a situation like football, you have one game and it's either you move on or you're done. And if you lay a goose egg like that, you have an entire off season to dwell in, to at least sit in this energy of what it feels like, right? And obviously you'll move on from it. It'll be a couple weeks, probably a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, and you'll be like, all right, like season's over. Let's focus on this year, right? But like for me, last year, having lost my quarterback in the first quarter and then my fourth stringer in the second quarter, like that was a hell of a goose egg of a game in and of itself, right? In a completely different way. But like I didn't even get to experience Niners football in the last game of the season for them. And
right,
so that feeling of like this is the last game, it's part of the like it's part of the pain part of being a football fan, right? It's like if you're eliminated in the playoffs, odds are it was a goose egg of a game and you're really unhappy.
yeah, and especially because I knew it was coming, but I fooled myself into thinking that we had a chance. That I believed that once my team walked out on the field, they would figure something out. And Jalen's finger was hurt, but he played relatively well. He didn't turn the ball over. They were just blitzing him every time, and there was only so much he could do based off of the plays we were running. And we ran the ball twice to start the game, and then we never ran it again. And it was just like, and then every time we tried after that, it was like almost like oh, let's see if it works this time, and we'll only run it again if it actually works. So that's just, we went away from what our strengths were throughout the whole season, and it was disappointing. So listen,
Yeah.
like, in terms of what this means, I don't know, because I need to know what happens with Nick Sirianni first. And then the Eagles are fine in terms of they can tear this whole defense apart and then add a few more pieces. We have 6 draft picks in the top 100. Like, Howie did a good job setting that up,
Nice.
despite the fact that he failed ultimately in the team building this year. But we can get out of contracts. We're going to get rid of Bradbury. I don't see Slay coming back. And we paid him, so I'd be surprised if Slay didn't come back, but I wouldn't want him to. I just don't know how I feel about him. And when we can draft guys or trade for guys, so we have movable pieces. We have contracts we can get out of, so it's not like it's over. And every time the Eagles are in this kind of situation in recent history, they've bounced back incredibly well. So just when we thought the sky was falling with Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni comes in and leads us to Super Bowl 2 years later. Before Peterson, It was Chip Kelly, and the Eagles were lighting it up, but they failed in the playoffs, and we're like, oh crap. And then Peterson comes in, leads us to Super Bowl 2 years later. So it's like, I'm not worried in their ability to bounce back, because Howie is good enough at his job to kind of recover from these kind of things. But right now, I'm nervous to see what happens, because if we have Nick Sirianni, it's probably going to be one more year. And if it doesn't work out, then he's gone. And I'm just like, okay, well, then what was the point of having him for another year anyway at that
Yeah,
point?
I was about to say it kind of sounds like a trend, right? It sounds like and it's Philly sports. I mean, we talked about this last week. It's like
Yeah.
The second the team starts to get into a situation where, you know, the fans are unhappy, the Philly as a team, they feel that pressure, and then it's fire this guy and let's hire this guy. And oh, okay, we made it to the Super Bowl. Oh, now we're terrible again. Not terrible, but we're struggling again. Fire this guy. Like, there's a lot of pressure being in Philly, and Howie's, I'm sure, feeling that pressure right now, especially with the kind of season they had after coming off a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where the Eagles, the pressure is really tough when the team is good and everything looks good on paper and everything like that. Because the Philadelphia has been through the worst record in the NBA, Sixers, the whole trust the process. You know, they had success with the Phillies, and then the Phillies were bad for a while. And the Eagles would have the occasional 4-12 year. But when in those years, they accepted the fact that they were bad and they understood that it was a growing process. But then once the team became something like real, legit, you're like, okay, this is our opportunity. We can't miss it. And then the pressure is insane and it's a little bit unrealistic sometimes. And that's what makes it tough. So,
yeah.
And it's going to continue, especially because we have this, we have a Super Bowl caliber roster, at least offensively. And we have a $250 million quarterback. We have our guy, which most teams don't. And he needs to step up and be the guy next year. And this is going to be a huge year for Jalen. It's not like a contract we can't eventually move off of should something go bad. But if he comes out and lays a goose egg next year, there's a real conversation about whether Jalen Hurts will be on the roster next year or not. It's just like the year after or not.
Agreed.
It's just that's how it is. That's the nature of everything. So in the offseason, we're gonna, you know, at least over these next few weeks, we're gonna hear a lot more, and we'll talk about it as it goes. But honestly, final thoughts. It was a disappointing end to the season, but it was poetic in the sense of this is just like how this collapse was. Everyone saw it coming, and it was too hard to ignore. And hopefully the Eagles recover fine enough to where they can continue to be a winning team. And I'm not worried about them next year, because next year they'll have a semi-easier schedule. They'll have the second place schedule, so the Cowboys are screwed because they're going to get the number one schedule. So the Eagles will have a chance to bounce back and still maintain at least a solid playoff record. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 11-6 or 12-5, but it's at least a little bit more convincing should the pieces mesh and Howie makes good moves in the offseason. So we'll see. So we will see.
That's a great point. And for it being your last week on the pod until next season, you know, hell of a statement, you know.
Yeah, so you know what? So, you know, since the Eagles aren't going to be on the pod anymore, at least, you know, as you know, in the playoff live. So for now, I'm just going to do something real quick. So give me a second here real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Bang, bang, Niner Gang, baby.
Oh my God.
We are in it. Let's go. Let's rock. I don't got to talk about these trash ass Eagles anymore. We're good. I can take a break. Let's go to the team that's really going to do. Is
that a McCaffrey jersey?
It is. So you know exactly where I bought this, you know, $30 Eagles jersey. I paired it with a $30 Niners jersey. I didn't. I was gonna send it
so much.
I was gonna send it to you as like a, hey, you're gonna wear this version, but I was like, you know what? Based off of how the season was ending, I thought this was appropriate. So
I love that.
That's weird. Fine. It's weird to see this bright red on me here. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And you know, it sounds a little hypocritical because I did pick the Ravens, but at the same time, the NFC, I had the Niners going to the Super Bowl, so it's not like, you know, the worst thing.
Sure.
But I just wanted
that is super funny.
So for those audio listeners out there who aren't watching this, I switched from an Eagles jersey to a Niners jersey. I had it underneath the whole time, ready for this moment. So
that was phenomenal.
I'll still have the Eagles background proud, but for right now, I don't got to wear that jersey anymore, so I'm good.
Well, on that note, Marcos, let's talk about some Niners football, baby.
Yes, sir.
So
we love it.
The Niners take on Green Bay.
It's gonna be fun.
Divisional round, and I'm actually super stoked for this game, dude. I really like what I've seen out of Green Bay in the past. I want to say it's been like
8 weeks, I think.
8 or 9 weeks, something like that. They've just gone on a freaking tear. I mean, they were beating teams. They beat the Chiefs. They lost to the Buccaneers, which is funny. They barely beat the Panthers. But like they beat the Lions at one point in that stretch. They beat the Rams. They lost a close one to the Steelers, and that one was kind of weird because it came down to some officiating, I think.
Same with the Chiefs game, but still, it's
But
Jordan Love, dude, that dude's he's a baller.
Look,
Um,
Jordan Love, I think it's time to really look at Green Bay as and Jordan Love as Green Bay having their true franchise quarterback. Like they are in really good hands with Jordan Love.
yeah, who knew?
Yeah,
Like
it's
their ability to evaluate quarterbacks is unbelievable. They're 3 for 3 in the past, 20 years. They hit with Favre, then you hit with Rodgers, and then next thing you know, you hit with Jordan Love, and they did it the same way every time, and it's worked. Jordan
yeah,
Love, they on First Things First, they did a statistical comparison to Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers in their first seasons, and Jordan Love is outplayed, has more wins. It's very interesting. And, Matt LaFleur is a Kyle Shanahan descendant. And I think it was early in the season, they looked clunky, right? And it's a product of learning this offense, all about timing, trying to, get guys in
yep,
the right spots. Receivers were just running the wrong routes. And all of a sudden, throughout this run, Jordan Love statistically, I think it was since week 11, has been the best statistical quarterback in terms of he has a 21-1 turnover ratio, like touchdown
mm-hmm,
turnover ratio.
mm-hmm.
Like he's balling out.
He is.
And the fact that, they went into Dallas, and now fortunately for the Eagles, that was the most embarrassing loss of the weekend. Um, so it was a great win. Jordan Love looked composed. They were able to run the ball. So, I have, are you, I think this adds a lot more intrigue that the Packers are playing well. How are you feeling about, the Niners coming into this game? I know they're rested now, and there's a lot of good news coming out of the Niners camp. So how's it going over there?
Yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm feeling confident, but we from about week 14, I want to say week 13 on, the Eagles and the Niners were pretty set in terms of like they're either an official lock in the playoffs for the playoffs, or they might as well be, right? And so it
Mm-hmm.
got to a point where it's like every week you could overlook it easily because you're like looking at the goal of just get to the playoffs, right? And so we had the discussion. It's like you can't overlook this week. You got to go into this week and play the game like it's last one, even though it's not. Well, you're here, all right. The Niners are here, and they're playing a 7 seed, but this 7 seed has been balling out. They just beat a Dallas team that they're not a bad team. Dallas isn't a
They're
bad
not.
team. They look like crap, and I would love to say that they are crap, but up and down that roster, on paper, still probably top two in the
Yeah.
league,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Like in terms of
So
just talent and stuff, offensively and defensively, yeah.
for sure. So I look at that and I'm like, all right, you cannot, as the Niners, look at it like, oh, the Cowboys got eliminated. Oh, the Eagles got eliminated. The Dolphins got eliminated. These teams that you were being compared to all year long in the NFC and the AFC and potential Super Bowl, yada yada yada. No, you got to go into this week. You got to take care of business. And the Niners historically have been really good coming off of rest under Kyle Shanahan. Kyle does a great job planning for teams when he has over 9 days to do it. And he was already planning for the Packers, he said, in the second quarter,
I saw that.
which is hilarious. And I love Kyle. I think that was like the perfect way for Kyle to talk his trash. But yeah, it's looking at Jordan Love since, week 11, or, week 9, whenever it was that he started really popping off, like it's something you can't overlook, right? And the unfortunate part is it was announced today Dre Greenlaw is questionable for the game, which
Oh,
yeah, I actually don't know what exactly he's dealing with. I think it's one of two things. It's either like a hip thing, or it was like Achilles tendonitis or something. But
oh, yikes.
not good to hear. But he is the only. There's one other guy out, but he's like basically a reserve player at that point. Everybody else is healthy and a full
Mhm.
go, which is awesome to hear, including Christian McCaffrey, which is huge considering the Packers are one of the worst teams this year at stopping a run game. Their bottom end, I want to say let's see, I got it right here. Green Bay allowed the 28th most rushing yards and 23rd most yards per carry this year. So it bodes well for a Niners team who develops and starts each game offensively, at least they should, on the ground, right? And that's getting Christian McCaffrey going, opening up the offense, and letting Brock just sling it from there. So what I really want to circle around to is the only way the Niners really lose this game, in my opinion, let me put it this way. The only way the Packers win this game is if the Niners lose this game.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners would have to go into this game and not play their normal play style, defensively and offensively. Like if we start by running the ball and then work into the pass game and get Brock comfortable with a few, dink and dunks here and there, just to get him feeling up the defense a little bit, right? Because he's had 2 weeks off, essentially, almost 3. That's a good amount of time that he hasn't taken a real snap. So get him comfortable early, make him feel good in the short throws, and then get him going with some medium ones to Brandon Ayuk, because he's going to be open in the middle of the field. And then you can start taking those deep shots. And for him, like, just making sure he's comfortable in the game is huge, especially if they win this game, because then he'll have that confidence going into the NFC Championship game, which last year was hard for him because he was handing it off for 2.5 quarters, right? So,
yeah.
Defensively, the Niners just have to stop the rock on the ground and then apply some pressure to Jordan Love. And I think if they do that, they have a good shot. The chance of beating the Packers is good in this one if they just play their game, right?
For sure.
But there's something about Jordan Love dropping back 8.5 yards and throwing on his back foot, just like Aaron Rodgers did, that is just terrifying the shit out of me.
Yeah, I haven't seen a young player really like play like that. He's playing in it. So this is a very, out there comparison, but he plays like a young Mahomes in the sense that like he's not as polished. Let me get that straight, but he plays out of structure. He plays loose. He's throwing balls that like don't make sense. He's sidearming it. He has a cannon. He can operate out of structure so well, and he can handle pressure in his face because he's a taller, bigger guy. So I am very interested to see just how the game goes for them. I'm interested to see how this game starts, because if I were the Niners, if I win the coin toss, I would start with the ball. I would take the chance and start the ball, because the Packers last week, they took their chance and went at a top 5 Dallas defense, and they got to score right away, and that set the whole tone for the rest of the game for Dallas, because they play differently when playing from behind. So the Niners at times, that's been their kryptonite a little bit. They're struggling when it's behind. Now it's in the fourth quarter, but you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're trailing early and having to just kind of work your way back and build that momentum up, especially when you're the rusty team over the past few weeks. So if I were the Niners, I'd take my offense and go for it first, and just give themselves, just kind of say, hey, we're going to take the fight to them. We're not going to let them take the fight to us, because they've proven that they can take out a top team. Now, outside of that, Aaron Jones has been awesome too. So you're right. You will have to try and stop him on the ground. For the past 5 weeks, he's leading all rushers, and he's been averaging like 115 yards a game. So it's like he's out there, and they will be balanced and try to incorporate play action. It's a very similar style of offense with Matt LaFleur versus Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle Shanahan does have the best winning percentage of any coach that hasn't won a Super Bowl in the playoffs. He's winning 67% of his games. So you're winning 2 out of every 3 games. Your percent, the team is rested. The favor is all in the Niners here, especially at home. And I still have a lot of faith that the Niners will get the job done. But for, Packers fans out there, they have a lot of hope going into this game based off of what they saw. And the Packers are in a position where they can't lose. Like, they were in that position last week. It doesn't matter. They didn't expect to win the first round. Now that you made it this far, this is a learning lesson. This is just only going to build this team moving forward. If they get washed by the Niners, that's almost as good as a lesson as just, keeping it close, because you played a good team in Dallas and surprised them at home. That in and of itself, you're like, okay, we beat a good team. But if the Niners come in and just dominate them, they're like, oh, this is the next step. This is where we have to go. Yeah. So they're in a good spot, and it'll be interesting to see just who comes out swinging first. And this will be a good quarterback battle in terms of, if Brock can just do his thing and outshine Jordan Love a little bit, this whole system QB talk can, calm down a bit.
It's so wild to me. Like I've been reading so many articles and listening to videos and yada yada. And I listened to a former executive, I believe it was an executive for the Raiders. I don't know her name. I don't really care because of what she said about Brock. She was like, there's 8 teams left and there's 8 quarterbacks left and there's 7 terrific quarterbacks left and there's Brock Purdy. And I'm like, wow, like you're not like, let's not focus on this season and how awesome he's been. And then I see other people talking just in comment sections, which I don't carry a lot of weight for me personally. But I see people like, he's dinking and dunking and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, he's done so much more than that, though. Yeah. Like, he has huge plays and he has these capabilities of reading a play before it even happens. And yeah, he might not be calling audibles out there and changing up plays, but he doesn't really have to because Kyle is a damn genius. Like it's not his fault. Kyle is a genius with, his play calling, and it's not his fault that he has all these amazing pieces around him that can execute the way they do. It's going to be great when and if and when Brock just absolutely demolishes the Packers and goes for like 300 yards, let's say no turnovers, like 3 touchdowns, right? Mm-hmm. And I love that you brought that up, the quarterback battle, because it was one of the questions I was going to ask you in this part of the pod was, who would you say is a better quarterback in this matchup? Like, no bias to me. Like, if you're just looking at the 2 quarterbacks currently, I'm not talking career-wise, like currently, who's the better quarterback going into this game?
Going into this game, it's Purdy. But if you're asking me who I would build my team around, I would say Love. And that's just from how the NFL is structured. Mm-hmm. He has the physical tools that Brock doesn't have, and that's not Brock's fault either. But in terms of operating an extremely complicated system with a high IQ and can make tough plays and isn't afraid to take risks, Brock is that dude. And in this game, I trust him more. And that's not even, I just know what he can do, and that's because I've paid more attention than all the people who say they pay attention to the Niners and then don't, and they just want to hate from a distance. But like, Brock has just stepped up in so many moments, and those times that he's faltered, it's every quarterback goes through it, so they treat it like it's something completely, only that, it was destined to happen. But I mean, that would happen to, so let Brock and Jordan Love could have the exact same stat line, and the Niners could win. Like, the Niners would win, and then everyone's going to talk about how great Jordan Love played, and then they're just not going to say anything about Brock. And that's just, and again, it's a product of the team he's on and the system that he's in, and people respect everyone else around him more than they respect him, versus everyone's like, oh, this is the youngest team in the NFL or in the playoffs, and Jordan Love is carrying and guiding this team, but he's also a system quarterback because Matt LaFleur is drawing up these plays that are getting these guys wide open. It's not like Jordan Love is extending plays; he's making awesome throws, but he's also not the sole reason that this happens. It's a system thing, so it's like they want to ignore it. But that in this game, it is Brock, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one of the things that gives me confidence going into the playoffs is, a lot of the times the team that ends up winning the Super Bowl, for the most part, is the team that's the most put together. Has stars from top to bottom, not just a star at QB with wide receivers that drop the ball every 3 or 4 plays. Like the Chiefs this year, I don't think the Chiefs will get it done. But the Chiefs, when they had Tyreek and Kelsey, yeah, they'll get it done.
Right. No, and we'll talk about those matchups later because I am interested because it was fun. But yeah, in terms of what I'm really looking out for in this game, I think the quarterbacks will make the biggest difference, because if Brock, the only way the Niners lose, in my opinion, is if turnovers happen. That's it.
Yes.
That's the only way the Niners have lost this year, is if they've just shot themselves in the foot. Just like you mentioned, if they're the ones that have to lose the game. And
even then they keep it close.
Right. Like, so, and you could have a couple turnovers in this game and they could still be neck and neck the whole time,
Yeah.
because the Packers defense, there are holes in there, but they did play extremely well against Dallas and got ahead early and sealed the deal. So that's not out of the realm of possibility for them to continue, especially with LaFleur having familiarity with this system. But Shanahan is a prepared coach, and when he gets the chance to be prepared, that's really hard to stop too. And again, all your guys are healthy, and you got Eric Armstead coming back too. That's huge. Like, at least in, outside of Dre, the offense is ready to go, and nobody's beaten the Niners with a fully healthy offense yet. So it's like it just hasn't happened.
The Ravens did.
But let me rephrase it: for when they start and finish the game, when none of the guys had to come out. So like Trent Williams still carries that torch because he went out that game and they lost. So it was, so long as they stay healthy, that's going to be, fine. And they had the chance to rest. So
I will wrap up by saying, if Green Bay beats the Niners, I will be a Packers fan the rest of the year.
Oh, rest of the year. Okay, I was gonna say
no, not the rest of my life. No, nothing like that. But I do have some family ties, mainly with my grandpa and my uncle, who I lost this year, and they were huge. They were huge Green Bay fans, and so like, if Green Bay somehow beats the Niners, I will have no other choice but to root for Green Bay the rest of the time. And also, how cool would it be to hold on to an underdog like that? Like,
oh, for sure, that'd be the best story.
Yeah, like, I would want them over the Lions, even though I'm still low-key rooting for the Lions right now. Because, number one, I want to be the team that eliminates them from the playoffs. But number two, I really do want to see the Lions just kind of have that Kings year where it's like, they did it, they finally made it. Oh, and they won a playoff game, and now they just get to go on this little run.
Yeah, for sure. And Dallas gifted them another home game, which was awesome too. So that's something you want to see. And
it's fun for them.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun. So I think so. Are we good off the Niners for now?
I'm good off the Niners.
What's your
score?
Talk
about them next week. Shoot.
It's okay. What's your score, brother?
Oh, I didn't even think about a score. Let me so we're 9.5 favorites.
Yes.
I have us in my head covering by a lot.
I love it.
I think it's a 14-point game by the end of it. And I'm going to say it's 35-21.
Nice. I was thinking 34-20, but I'm also like, man, I could see them making it a game, but I can't see them. Like, they put up 48 on Dallas. Like, that's nasty. But that was they had defensive touchdowns too, and field position and all that too. So
a lot of field position.
Yeah, so I got to take that into account. No, I want to believe in this team, but I will give them a 9 point. So I'll do 34, 20, 25. Random 25, but it'll be fine.
It's a random 25. Yeah. I like it.
If something random's gonna happen, maybe they'll get a safety or something. I doubt it, but it'll be it. I think they'll cover. Then the Packers will cover. So we'll see. But it'll be a fun game. It'll be entertaining to see. Like, Jordan Love gets a good opportunity. So he wasn't so now that we're moving on, we'll talk about some of the highlights from the Wildcard weekend before we pick our divisional rounds here. So Jordan Love wasn't the only first-time starter to kind of light up their opponents. CJ Stroud did something special against Cleveland.
That was so cool to see.
It was so cool to see, dude. So D'Amico getting his first win, that was a huge highlight.
Yes.
I do. In your opinion, who would you rather have? Would you rather have Jordan Love or CJ Stroud?
To build my franchise around?
Yeah, let's say that. Like, okay,
CJ Stroud.
CJ Stroud.
Okay. Yeah. Well, keep going though.
Because I was thinking, like, who would you build your franchise with? But I guess it was also like, who had the more impressive showing to you?
Did you see how close they were in their first games? Yes.
No, I didn't.
Hold on. I gotta pull this up because this is insane.
And for the record, for those who don't know, Houston dominated 45-13 or something like that. It wasn't even close either. But, it was at home for them. And, this could be the way it's set up. This could be another, another two QBs that we'll be talking about having some potentially legendary matchups against each other, because they are just really good. They have good size, great arms, and they showed that they can win in any situation. And I think for Houston, it's almost more impressive just because of who Stroud has as his receivers too. Like, and I guess Jordan Love's guys aren't that great either, but it's like his CJ Stroud's two starting wide receivers were hurt, and he was just beating them with Nico Collins, and I'm like, this is insane. And
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have the stats?
So listen to this.
Okay.
So Stroud went 16 for 21 on completions. Love went 16 for 21 on completions. Stroud went 274 yards. Love went 272 yards.
Oh, wow.
And both of them had 3 touchdowns.
Wow, that's crazy.
How freaking wild is that, dude?
Oh, wow. For first timers.
So,
and the whole debate between first timers was like, I think against the spread, they were 17-31 and like 4 with, just like with how well they do for first time starters.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
Crazy.
Like, they're both awesome. And I think they're, they both have real chances to pull up, upset the 1 seeds if they want to, but it's going to be an uphill battle. But it was great that they were able to get this kind of start, because that attention to both of their teams is going to be huge moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would lean towards CJ just because I don't know. I don't really have like a legit reason.
That's fair.
I genuinely like. I feel like I've been watching CJ Stroud a little bit more this year because of my ties as a Niners fan to D'Amico. And so I've watched that Texans team a little bit this year, a little bit more than I've watched the Packers. And just seeing CJ just, come into his own this year and really figure things out as a first year player, and get some of the reps that you wouldn't normally get as a rookie. I feel like I could really trust that guy with my franchise in his hands.
Oh, for sure. Cool. Especially moving forward. And both of those guys did great, but CJ Stroud does have the age advantage on him. He is a rookie, and Jordan Love had, to wait for 3 years before getting his call up too. So Jordan Love will have a nice stretch, but he is significantly older, and he has had more experience behind more experienced guys to get these kind of reps into practice. So that does play a factor too. I was more impressed with CJ, but I loved watching Jordan Love play. And but the thing is, like, CJ Stroud can get to that level and then some within 3 to 4 years of just being the guy. So they were both really impressive showings. And we can talk about, what did you think of the cold weather game, the Miami KC game? There were some crazy stories coming out of there. Travis Kelce saying that it was just really tough, and guys were trying to find all sorts of ways to cover up. Their skin was just like hurting anytime they were out there. Like,
yeah, and there was like 15 incidents at least of people getting hospitalized afterward for
hypothermia.
Yeah.
Like, I saw that. I was like, that's wild.
Crazy stories.
Why do they allow that kind of game? Like, and like Mahomes' helmet breaking off, like a piece breaking off because it was so cold. And, I get it. Like, I get that it's December, so it's going to be cold, but like, why would you put these guys in like that kind of position? So
I feel bad for a team like Miami that
they can't control where their team's at, right? Like,
yeah, and they're so used to 70 at least.
That's the coldest it gets.
70 average, weather in Florida, and they have to go into Kansas City in their first round after having a pretty good season, with exception to the end. Like, I don't know. I feel for them. I didn't necessarily believe in them this year, so I wasn't at any point going to pick them as a Super Bowl favorite. But just a pretty unfortunate circumstance for them to have to run through Kansas City during an absolute cold front.
Yeah, and then they postponed the Bills-Steelers game. Now, when you saw those videos, it was completely understandable. Like, that was unplayable, right? Like, that would have been like a 3-0 game at best. Like, if they could even kick a field goal.
The only people that could see that game are like the lower section.
Exactly. So it's like, it was unplayable. So again, that factored into why I picked the Steelers. Had I known they were going to play in just a nice weather game, I wouldn't have picked the Steelers to win that either. But The Bills game was great. Josh Allen showed out. He had a nice big run, like the longest run since Kaepernick. Like they looked good, but again, the Steelers were kind of doomed from the get go, playing in that kind
Yeah.
of environment. But that's what playoff football should be. It was a beautiful day. It was cold and crisp. Like I get that, so I'm not gonna hate on giving the NFL a better product to play that day. But that makes me wonder
Yeah.
too for games like Kansas City. Do you feel what side are you on if you have one on like every team should have a dome? Because that's been a
I'm
debate
more
for some of
for,
these games.
yeah. And yes, I agree, but I would push first for every team should have grass before I push for every team should have a dome.
That's fair. I see you. And that is a fair argument to have. And then because you see some of these games that are just like, man, if you had a dome, that'd be great. But also these games like the Eagles playing at like MetLife, anybody who plays at MetLife, or like if you just had grass, it'd be a much more playable product. But
Yeah.
no, and I mean, I'm not fully sold on that either because you got places that really don't need a dome. Like, let's be honest, like San Francisco doesn't need a dome. Like,
And that's,
so
yeah. And like Florida, like Jacksonville or Miami, like these stadiums that it's really cool to have that open ceiling and no roof over the top. And it's like you're experiencing the weather. Like
except for
it makes
thunderstorms.
sense. Yeah, for sure. But it makes sense for teams that, for the most part will deal with harsh weather like this during the football season, right? Like
Mhm.
more often than not, especially like Buffalo, Kansas City, like those kind of teams. Like there is definitely an advantage to your home field when you're used to playing and practicing and so on and so forth, like in that condition, right? And so
Mhm.
you definitely have more of a home field advantage in that sense. um I don't think it's bad for the game, to have that kind of an advantage. I think it's unfortunate when you're a team like Miami that's got to roll into Kansas City
Right.
after
Exactly.
the whole season you had, and it's just kind of what you got to deal with.
Yeah. The
But
playoffs
yeah,
are meant for cold
grass
weather teams.
grass has got to happen before a dome like that, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I do wonder. I wouldn't be surprised if the the NFL does do domes like all over the place, just to like in the sense of, but it's part of the intrigue. Like again, playoffs are for cold weather teams, but if they wanted a completely fair product, like then everyone playing in the same style, there's
Yeah,
no, the weather can't play a factor in the, bull crap plays and stuff like that. But then it would fall into like the good teams would really just be able to own some of these like, bad teams who kind of luck out in like a rainy game or stuff like that. So it is, those
yeah,
debates are weird.
yeah. I feel you.
So what else was there? Trying to think over the weekend because there was a lot of games. Oh yeah, the Rams and the Lions was the most competitive game of the bunch. That was fun to watch. Sean McVay doing his classic not being able to manage the clock great scenarios and allowing an electric Detroit crowd. Like that was cool to see. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty cool to see.
It was really cool to see. I gotta be honest, I was pretty upset with the officiating coming out of that game, though.
Yeah.
There were some missed calls, more so on the Rams side, like Puka, and there was a pass interference on third. It was either third or fourth. I think it was third down. It was a pass interference on Puka, wasn't called. There was late hits on Stafford, and then the fact that they let
Oh yeah.
Stafford go back in, even though he was starting to posture
He
and his
did the whole
eyes were
Tua
rolling
thing.
back, like it's um, there were things in this game that kind of bugged me, but damn, was that a good matchup, and it was super fun to listen to that crowd pull a Sacramento Kings, in the game one scenario in the playoffs. It is the atmosphere through my television screen sounded phenomenal, and I
Yeah.
would have killed to be there in that, just experiencing it.
Yeah, and they get a good matchup this weekend too with the Bake Show. So that'll be which is a winnable matchup. So like
It
that'll
is.
add even more intrigue and like they said I think they were the matchup that was setting the record prices for a playoff game already. Might as well rake it
Just
in
like
while
the
they
Kings.
can. Yeah, they might as well
Just like
rake
the
it in.
Kings, baby.
That was bad.
Talk about the Kings raising their prices 300%. 300% after the year they had. Thank you. I'm not renewing my tickets. I love the Kings, but that's not going to happen.
Gotta make the revenue now that we're legit. Well, Well, yeah, that's another
Yeah,
conversation.
rip
But
off the fans that loved you for 16, 17 years when you were trash. It's fine.
um,
I'm not mad. Don't worry.
that's the price of having, three potentially max contract players. You got to pay them somehow. You got to raise the prices.
Yeah.
Um, so let's look into some of these divisional matchups. Well, we'll look into all of them because they're going to be fun. So we'll start with the AFC. We'll go with the first game will be the Ravens and the Texans. I'm excited for this. It's
I
a
am so
nasty
excited
matchup.
for this one.
I think
Yeah.
very similar to the Niners and Packers. The Ravens, I think, are gonna dust them, but they have the juice. They have the juice. So it's like,
So I love your point of view on this. In my opinion, this is the biggest game for the Ravens if they want to make it to the Super Bowl. Because if I look at it, the Ravens can easily beat Kansas City and they could go toe to toe with Buffalo, but I think they're going to win that. Houston is really like they're a wild card right now. They're hot. They're looking really good. Like they just came off putting up 45 points against one of the top defenses in the league. I
yeah,
know the Ravens right now are the number one defense, but the fact that you're putting up 45 on any team, let alone one of the top three defenses in the league, that's intriguing to me. And that excites me because I think about Lamar Jackson. I'm gonna shit on him for a second. Lamar has won games this year because of his defense. A lot more games than Purdy's won because of his supporting cast. Like Lamar has been gifted amazing field advantage all year long, and statistically, it's proved that. Like his stats are so much farther down than anybody else's just because of his field position. There's no taking away from his skill set, right? It's just kind of how it's worked out for him.
and it's
So
gonna give him the MVP this year. So
yeah, absolutely will. Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't deserve it. No, I'm just kidding. He does.
fair enough.
No, when I look at it like this, like the Texans, if they can move that ball down the field against the Ravens and not give Lamar a great field advantage, um, and they can at least get field goals, if not punch it in, they're gonna have to punch it in more than they put field goals up, of course. But I just if CJ doesn't make mistakes against this Ravens defense, there's a good chance they could pull off an awesome upset. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I think CJ is going to make some mistakes. I think he's going to throw a couple picks. That Ravens defense is damn good, man. It's
And,
scary how good they are.
and it's at Baltimore, so that'll be that environment. You're gonna have to deal with it. You're not in the dome. But again, it's
Yeah.
very much like the Packers. If they come out swinging and just take the fight to Baltimore, they will have a chance because Baltimore is rested and rusty. And last time they were rested and rusty, they lost to the Titans at home. So
That's right.
it's not, and this is also the same year in 2019 where Lamar won MVP. So like it's all kind of realigning again. So he has to knock that trend off, and they need to go out there and show that they're the better team. So
Definitely.
Again, I agree with you. Like Houston, I'm not going to count out. They have a chance because of Stroud and D'Amico, and they can rally as a team, and they can't lose. Like they're in a can't lose situation. So,
Yeah.
no, it'll be fun to watch for sure. That'll be entertaining, and we get the KC Buffalo rematch. That's always entertaining. Josh Allen still hasn't won in the playoffs against Mahomes. He's 0-2, and
that changes this time.
and the best game that Josh Allen had in the playoffs was a loss against KC in the 13-second game. And, it's
holy crap.
And this is also Patrick Mahomes' first road game in the playoffs that isn't on a neutral site because he's played 3 Super Bowls and they were all on neutral sites. Ever since then, all the other playoff games, the Wildcard, divisional, conference titles, they have been in KC. This is the first road playoff game. Yeah.
It all ran through KC. That's crazy.
During that, they were just that dominant. They always had the 1 or 2 seed, and then the 1 seed lost or stuff of that nature, and they just always had the conference championship at KC. So every game that Mahomes has played that wasn't a Super Bowl was played in Kansas City. So this is huge for Buffalo in the sense that this will be the first kind of road playoff game where he actually has to go to somebody else's building that isn't neutral and try to take them on. And Buffalo's a tough place to play. So I'm still, if I had to pick, I picked against them last week, and that game was weird, and the weather won't be as intense this week. At least I don't think it will be. It's still going to be cold. It's winter in Buffalo,
It's gonna
so
be
like
cold
that's
as
fine.
hell.
But Casey's used to
Both
that
teams
too.
like the cold though.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and similar styles. They both have awesome quarterbacks, but Mahomes just does it, and it pisses me off. I think if they do end up going to face Baltimore, if it's KC versus Baltimore, then KC will. I think they will lose that matchup just because of the intensity of the defense. And
Yep.
Buffalo's defense is not the great. They're not. They played fine, but they played a lowly Steelers team that couldn't score for anything. And you have to go up against Patrick Mahomes, even if the guys are dropping balls. It was really just Travis Kelce dropping catches last week, and I don't think that's going to
Yeah.
happen as much this week.
No.
So, it'll be interesting. And Josh Allen, I think, is going to play well. But this KC defense, this is the best defense that Mahomes has ever had. Like,
Yeah.
he's
Not
entering
close.
that portion of his career. Like Brady, when he won those Super Bowls, like the early part of his career, he carried them, and then after, like, he played extremely well, and he was still Tom Brady, but he had great defenses to back him up. So Mahomes is entering that level where he doesn't have to play perfect because his defense will help him this time. And that KC defense is nasty. They're young and they're flying all over. They have the corners to cover their receivers, and it'll be interesting to see. So, Josh Allen's the toughest person to bring down as a runner, and they're definitely going to try and use him. But it'll be interesting to see how they maintain Mahomes, because Mahomes just had Mahomes magic in the freaking Dolphins game that pissed me off, dude. Just watching him, just understand breaking off big runs and just making plays that he annoyingly shouldn't. And it's like, I can just see that continuing in the playoff against Buffalo. And if he does win and own this matchup, like, people got to stop comparing these two as the next Manning Brady matchup, because Josh Allen will have never beaten him in the playoffs when it matters. So
I want to backtrack for a second, or rather, you know what? Let's do this. Let's talk about all the matchups.
Okay.
And then we'll go back and do our scores, or not our scores, but at least our picks. Okay. So I will say that this is going to be a really fun matchup, and I'm pulling for Buffalo because I want to see Buffalo make it. I do. I talked about earlier in the season, like, I'm sick of Buffalo. I said it. I said something along those lines, like, I'm tired of Buffalo because I always think they're going to be good, and then they just crap the bed in the playoffs, or and then I think about it, and I'm like, they run into Mahomes every single time.
Every single time.
Like, and it just sucks. It's kind of like the Miami running into Kansas City. You know what I mean? Like, it's situational. But yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup, and the fact that Mahomes has less weapons this year, but he has a fire defense, and Buffalo's offense has been awesome this year, but their defense is a little like, hit or miss. It's going to create, like, it's one of those things that can literally go either way. And Buffalo's home field advantage, like you said, I'll speak to it too. Like, it's phenomenal. Like, Bills Mafia is freaking crazy. I mean, if there's snow, they're throwing snow at the players. They shouldn't be doing it, but they're doing it.
I also think that, like, sorry to interrupt. I also think Allen this year was 7-1 at home. So he plays way better at home than he does on the road.
Yes, he feeds off of that energy, and it shows. I mean, he's the kind of quarterback that will get pissed off when he gets hit a certain type of way, and then he'll use that energy and just build off of it and take it the rest of the game, right? So he's kind of like Baker in that regard, except Baker is the kind who will, smelling salts and stuff like that. Like, Josh probably doesn't do that. Okay.
Yeah.
But no, it's gonna be a good game.
No, for sure. Crazy game. That one will probably be the most intense of all the matchups, for sure. So, and again, for Buffalo, this is as good as a chance as you're ever going to get against Kansas City in the playoffs. Like, I
don't think you get a better one.
No team has had to go. KC hasn't had to go anywhere ever in the past 5 years in the playoffs. So it's like, this is a rare opportunity to upset them in this way, because the Bills are favored, but let's be honest, history favors Mahomes no matter what. So that's what's going to be the intriguing part. So Hey, if the Bills win, then that's awesome. That'll set up an even more fire matchup for the conference title. So, all right, we'll switch on over to the NFC. So we obviously talked about the Niners and Packers and made our picks there. So we just got our one game to talk about there, which will be the Bucks and the Lions. Who do you have winning this game? Like, how are you feeling about this game? Because the Buccaneers have kind of been showing out, and I want to admit that they looked good against a team that didn't want to be there in Philly. So it's almost kind of hard to like truly evaluate the Buccaneers game because Baker played great. He stepped up and he played awesome. But I don't know if I see him going into Detroit and beating them when they have all the vibes are saying, hey, Detroit's going to win this game.
When you haven't won a playoff game in that long, and you finally win a playoff game, and you can put that behind you and move on to the next one. What I'm trying to allude to is like there was so much pressure on the Lions going into this last game for them. There was history riding on them. There was every reason. Like the Rams are, in my opinion, were a tougher matchup for them than the Buccaneers, and that's not just situational. That's just like that team versus the Buccaneers. It's just the Rams are a better team than the Bucs.
Yeah,
and they took care of business in a game that had a lot more weight to it. When I look at that and the fact that they beat the Rams and now they've got almost like a fresh start, there's a weight lifted off of that franchise, off of those players who have felt that weight, right? Because like I don't see any chance for the Buccaneers in this one. I think the Lions are going to genuinely they're going to tear them apart. We're going to see the best version of the Lions probably this year than we've seen it all. Just because of all that weight of getting to the playoffs, getting home field advantage, winning that first playoff game. Like it's all gone now. You can ride it now. You can ride your skill set.
Right. It's almost they're in a can't lose. Like they've already done what they were supposed to and just win a playoff game, like you mentioned. So at this point, even if they lose, like, yeah, they should have won that game, but everyone's going to be like, we won the playoff game. Let's get the next step. We can build and blah, blah, blah. All that fun stuff. I agree completely. So we talked about all the games. So let's have our scores for our games. So let's go back to Baltimore versus Houston. What do you think?
So we're doing scores?
Yeah. We talked about how we think each team can win or lose or what could happen. Yeah. But like in reality, what do we think the scores are going to be? Or what do we want them to be?
32-24. No, 32-27 Texans.
Very nice. I love it. I think it's going to be more of like a 27-21 Baltimore game for that one. Now, Bills and KC. How are you feeling?
This one, dude, is so tough.
Tough, dude. I think it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be another crazy game.
And traditionally, the Bills Chiefs matchup has been high scoring.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say 38-35 Buffalo.
Very nice. I'm going to go just slightly lower. I think it's going to be, they just haven't done it lately. So I want to say the KC defense actually rattles Allen enough, but I do think this is going to be just an insane finish. So I'm going to say 28-27 KC.
Oh.
I think it's gonna come down to something crazy like it normally does. So then we already had our Niners. We have our Niners picks, bang bang, let's go crazy. And then so for the last game, Detroit versus the Buccaneers. How you feeling? What do you think?
I'm gonna say Detroit. 42. Buccaneers 28.
I could see that score. Man, I don't see them putting up 42.
I know.
I could see like a 35-28 game. So,
I can see that too.
yeah, so we'll do that. So, um which matchup of the four outside of your own, I guess outside of your own, because you're obviously going to be most excited for yours.
Yeah.
What outside matchup outside of the Niners are you most excited for?
Texans, Baltimore. Like I just there's something about that game for me that feels like it's going to be really good. And
Mm-hmm.
it's another gut feeling that I had similar to last week. I just feel like the Texans are gonna really give Baltimore some trouble, and we're gonna be like, holy crap, like they're in this, they're in this, they're in this, they might win this, and then maybe Baltimore pulls it off at the last second, or they don't. Like I just feel like it's gonna come down to the wire. But damn, man, yeah, that matchup for me is just it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it'll be a win-win for you because if Houston wins, then it's D'Amico, and yeah, they got the win, and then Baltimore loses, and you don't have to worry about it. Yes, like it'll
Right.
be easy. Um, but now I think for me it'll be KC Buffalo, just because
Mhm.
I think it's gonna be the most competitive game of the bunch, and I hope it does. I hope it lives up to the billing. And those two are always fun to watch, but I am interested to see because the narrative from that game is going to probably be the craziest of you know, in terms of Allen versus Mahomes, and just that'll be the storyline. They're like, if Allen
Yeah.
wins, oh, he really is up there. He finally beat Mahomes, blah. But even though he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, nah. But like, and then Mahomes is like, oh, you couldn't beat Allen, but hey, your receiver sucks, so you're gonna be fine. Like, you're still Patrick Mahomes. No one's gonna really hate on him. But this
Right.
is the biggest game of Allen's career by far. Like, it's not even close.
Not
So
even close. Yeah.
this is the best chance he's got. So for that intrigue alone,
It's exciting, bro. This week is awesome. Like
yeah,
matchup wise, there's so many cool matchups. I'm really stoked to get to the weekend. Like I hate that I got one more day to get to it.
that's true. And at least it's Saturday for you guys. So, the Niners get to play first. We get to watch
That's
our
true.
QB Brock just dominate, and, hopefully everything works really well. So,
RQB, get out
yeah.
of here.
We're, bang, bang, baby. I'm repping it for now. So they're my NFC team, so I'll rep it. I don't even care.
You
So
know, as a Niners fan now, you have to hate the Eagles. So
I I do. Like, I do hate the Eagles right now, bro. I will hate them until I figure out what they're gonna do next, and then I'll, we'll circle back to how I feel.
I feel you. I feel that.
All right. So, any final thoughts before we head out here?
No, we're not going to talk Kings today because the Kings did something that hasn't been done since I think it was 2021. And they blew a 22-point lead in the fourth quarter, which was a 99.9% chance to win. Did that against a Suns team that was struggling all game long to get anything going offensively and also couldn't guard them, guard the Kings, that is. Yeah, I am disgusted with the Kings at the moment, and Marcos feels the same. Am I right?
Yes, and the only thing I'll say about that game is, like, it was comparable to the Warriors, the game we played against the Warriors in the in-season tournament game, where we were down 24 and then we came back and won the game because all they were doing was turning the ball over at the very end, and that's all the Kings did. And like, they went small, and for some reason Kevin Durant was bodying Domas. Like, come on, guys, like, let's. And sloppy turnovers. It was weird, and it was like 3 bad losses in a row. It's just it's kind of that's a position where, like, we're watching Indiana. They traded for Pascal. We're gonna see how that works out for them. But now the dominoes are starting to fall. Hopefully, like, gets the ball rolling, and some of these trades start happening soon. And we can just this something different needs to happen, because the way the Kings are set up right now is flawed, and we just need more pieces that can be playmakers for us.
Are we a play-in team if we don't make a trade?
No, we're a playoff team. I think we would avoid. We're going to be we'd be a top 6 team. We're better than these teams that are below us, and we play up to the level of the teams that are above us. So it's like, I think we're going to continue this roller coaster of, we're going to have good stretches, and then we're going to look like crap, and then we're going to have good stretches, look like crap, and we're
Yeah,
still going to be a playoff team, but then we're probably going to get a not favorable matchup based off of how our team is constructed now. So if we make a
that's a good
trade,
point.
there's a possibility that, it could mess up, but there's also a better chance based off of who we get that will at least climb a spot or two. I think even with the trade, especially if it's happening now, if it happens sooner rather than later, then I'm more confident in how the success will go because they'll have more time to mesh. Like Indiana did the
Fair.
smart thing by getting Siakam in the building now because that gives him more time. Even if he is a rental, you're still building that chemistry now. So you have more time instead of waiting till February 8th, the trade deadline, and then just having to figure it all out within the next 2 months. So it's like,
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, we'll definitely
That's
talk
all we
about
got
that
for
more.
that.
Yeah, we'll talk
Yeah.
about that more. But the playoffs are going to take major priority, especially so long as the
Yep.
Niners survive. Now that the Eagles are out of it, we're not going to really be talking Eagles until the offseason or until announcements have been made on what's actually happening. So once we find out more, I'll definitely be looking into it. I know Ben will keep his eye on out for it, and we'll just be talking about it as it goes. And then once the offseason hits, it's going to be more basketball oriented, and then talking about the Niners and Eagles as news comes in during the offseason. So
Exactly.
but the Niners will hopefully make it to the Super Bowl and keep that content going until we go from there. So but with that being said, this was episode 25 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on social media. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook. And please, if you guys haven't, if you have some time and you want to watch us on YouTube, you can find us there as well. Give us a like, subscribe, let us know how we're doing. Leave some comments down there. We'll definitely love to respond to you guys if you had any takes or comments for us. So I am Marcos Conan, and beside me here is
Benny the Jet. We love y'all.
Yes, sir. Bang, bang. Good luck on Saturday, my dude. We got to watch our
Appreciate
Niners
you.
dominate.
Let's get them.
Let's get it. Bang, bang, baby. Peace.
Bang, bang. Peace.